ready?
Yeah, sure.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. As you know, we run our weekly webinars aimed to provide advice and share knowledge on key business topics and specialist areas. Joining me today is BizSmart Select member Paul Rhodes from Green Gorilla Apps. Paul, would you like to tell us more about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Paul from Green Gorilla. We're a software development company. We build bespoke web and mobile applications. Effectively, we're a bunch of geeks in a room. Well, we're in a room until we go through this kind of thing. But yeah, I've been invited today to have a quick conversation around some of the things that have been going on at our end in terms of remote working and some of the challenges and opportunities there. And I thought it would be a good topic for a conversation, really. So yeah, happy to go through that.
That's great. Thank you. So we'll start the webinar in a second. We'll just turn the screen off so then you can see all of the slides properly. So if I can just say, if you've got any questions, please use the question mark function on your screen, and then Paul will do his very best to answer them all at the end. Okay, thank you very much.
Are you good to go, yeah?
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, so obviously, as I alluded to before, for me, this topic's really just about how, as a company, GGA, we went from 100% office working to what we class as remote working. And I just thought it'd make a good conversation around some of the opportunities that that's presented, but also some of the challenges. And I know there's a lot of businesses out there who are entirely office-based, and then there's other businesses that are entirely remote working-based. And I guess because we ran a hybrid for a period of time, we've now got some conclusions around what's worked for us and what hasn't worked. So I've just put together a slide deck around that, and I thought I'd start with anybody who's in my team knows that I love a quote. So I've basically I went to Natural History Museum with my kids at the weekend, so I was reading all about Charles Darwin and stuff, so I thought this one was quite applicable to this subject. So it's not the strongest of the species that survives nor the most intelligent that survives, it's the one that is most adaptable to change. In the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. And I guess being in the tech space and looking at new technology all the time and stuff, we see, I guess, as early adopters opportunities for future working. And obviously, hot desking's been around a while, but as we go into this topic, I think there's some real opportunities there that it's a bit extreme to think of it as an evolutionary process. But yeah, I just like that quote, so I thought it was quite apt. So we'll dive straight in. So yeah, as I said, my name's Paul Rhodes. I'm on Green Gorilla Apps. We're a team of 8, predominantly development, but we've also got project manager, account managers and things like that, and we've got designers. So we are a software development company, and we basically build bespoke applications. And I'm really passionate about a process and a movement called Lean and Agile, which is like Scrum methodology, and we do a lot of consultancy around that. And at the same time, we offer service work, and we also build our own products. So all of that coming together, and all of that, I guess, communication, account management, you'll see how that works in our business from a remote perspective as well. So hopefully that will give companies out there who have got, it's not just a delivery end of it, it's like the whole piece. You might see how that can pull together. So I started by thinking about what are some of the questions that people might have. So it'd be good to start off with a definition of what I class as remote working. Also, there's also a whole point about why you should even care about it. I think that there's like I say, there's some massive opportunities to gain. And to me, remote working doesn't necessarily have to mean just somebody who's employed. There's obviously ways to collaborate, and we'll get onto those with other businesses. And then I guess the question is, do you need an office? And in today's business world, especially UK-based, do you actually need an office? And I'll try and answer that from our perspective. And then I guess there's this classic thing in business that you come across where it's like, well, would it work for me? But my business is different. We have to have we have to have an office for these reasons. And it's just, I guess, looking at some of the technologies that enable you to not be in the office all the time and be connected. So I guess, I started to think about, well, how did this all come about for us? So we've been basically what I class as remote working since August last year. So quick mental maths, it's roughly, I think it's about 9 months. We basically do monthly team meetings where we have like a team lunch together, and we do a thing as part of that called an action learning set, where it's a bit like a round robin. We just simply go around the room and everybody gets to present one idea or challenge that they have in the business, and then we vote which one we're going to discuss. And one of the guys, I think his son was 6 months old, and he wanted to talk not about remote working but flexible working. And he raised a topic of, having a young family and other people with commuting issues and stuff. We just looked at the idea of what we could do to make flexible working more, I guess, seamless in the organisation. We already have our typical setup, I guess, is casual working. We have a set number of hours per week, but nobody's like effectively, it's not a 9 till 5 job that we operate. We do have flexibility already, but it was really to look at how we could be even more flexible and make sure that people were productive as possible. So we decided to trial it, and the original trial, the idea we came up with is we looked at having gone round the room and voted as what we're going to discuss, and then we looked at, okay, so if we're going to do this, let's do it as a 1-week trial. Let's work out what we need to do as a business to facilitate that trial. And the idea we came up with was Monday to Friday. So on a Monday, we went into the office, and basically, at that time, we weren't really that mobile. We were more like desktop-based. So we basically, at the end of Monday, gathered up all the equipment, went in separate ways, and the idea was that Tuesday to Thursday, we'd work remotely, and then on the Friday, we'd reconvene in the office and do like a retrospective about what was good about the experiment and what we changed. And I guess the backstory to all this is we have a really good project management methodology in place anyway, so actually monitoring what people had to get done that week was pretty easy to do because we run sprints. And the reality is we never went back into the office, and we've still never been back in for that Friday. Basically, it went really, really well on the Tuesday and through to the Thursday. That we did have a conversation Thursday evening about whether to come back into the office, and we thought, well, we'd extend it. But the reality is we haven't been back in since. And I guess leading into the next few slides, it will kind of explain what happened in that week and what we saw the opportunity as. The thing I've put below as well is, for me, there's these different, I guess, phrases, aren't there? And I've coined this phrase of like, I've picked it up somewhere, it's not my phrase, but nomadic working. So remote working for me doesn't mean that you're sat at the same desk in your, like, say, home working. That's not what it means at all for me. I prefer nomadic working, so it basically means that you can be as productive anywhere, and that could be anywhere in the world. It could be in any, if you can do your work productively in a coffee shop, then for me that's remote working. So I don't want to label our team as home workers now. I wanted them to have the flexibility to go and achieve what they needed to do. So effectively, that's basically where nomadic working comes from. It's the idea that you should actually be productive in any environment.
Sorry, put your carry on.
That's all right. Yeah, productive in an environment. So I'll whittle through this. So I mean, if you just think about, okay, so you still need to be productive. You still need to produce the deliverables and do the account management, project management, and the management of the team. However, there's going to be some benefits and some downsides. So I've kind of listed some of the biggest benefits here. So I guess one of the things that's happened is the flexibility, which was the original goal. Suddenly, if you get the setup right and tools and stuff in place, which we'll come on to, you really can create a huge amount of flexibility in your team. I don't think it matters even if you're a one-man band or you've got a team of 25 or 50 or 100. It can work, and you see this in a lot more corporate organisations that we work with, where they'll have, I don't know, 200 staff in a centre, but they'll only have 100 desks, and they work on this hot desking policy. Well, our thing is it's about giving flexibility in all sorts of avenues of your own work-life balance. So I guess to allude to that, working hours changes massively. We have a core set of hours now where you need to be present in the office, but at the same time, our team, because they're not commuting, they've effectively created 2 hours a day, each of them, to do other things. And I honestly don't want those 2 hours. I want those to enjoy that freedom that they get. It's remarkable that 2 of them have taken up running, and I won't say they've become super fit, but they can run faster than me. So that's a good goal. And then you also get your productive periods of the day. So if you're in an office and you've got a strict half-an-hour lunch break, and you can just in that time walk down to the supermarket and back and grab a sandwich, I think with remote working, you kind of identify your peak productivity periods, and you can kind of flex your time to do that because you've not got this commute, or you can actually decide to have an hour and a half lunch break and really clear your head because you're tackling something that's quite stressful, or go for a walk. I'm not saying you can't do that in an office, but I just think it becomes a lot easier when you're in a remote mindset. I mean, I often do that even when I'm in like Birmingham or London or whatever. I'll go around and get my head clear for an hour or so, and I don't think I was ever in that mindset before. Definitely gives you focus because you're working when you're most productive, and I think like another guy on BizSmart, Mike Gardner, the time doctor, will be able to help people with productive periods of the day and focus. And then the biggest thing, and the reason we wanted to look at it from my own personal perspective, there are like 2 kids at school, and I now do a lot more school runs than I ever did, and I'm a lot more flexible in getting involved in childcare than I ever was, because I'm not actually in a different location, or I can be available. Frees up time and money, so on average, by working remotely, obviously you've still got costs of travel if you're doing train or driving, but in general, the guys in my team's personal income in terms of petrol has gone, personal expense has gone down massively, so they've actually seen it as almost like a huge incentive there. And I think stress, the ability to just get some real work-life balance in place and have moments where you can go for a walk or you can take a break or whatever is critical. And then we've ended up with a really highly motivated team. It's become a big incentive, and it's interesting as we get onto some of the challenges. It's become a big part of how we would recruit the next employee at GJ. And then obviously, it goes without saying, reduced office costs. So my background to all of this is I've worked for a year from a bedroom. I've worked for 2 years from serviced offices. I've worked for 3 years from fully leased multi-story buildings. So it's kind of I wouldn't say I've worked in all types of office space, but I've definitely incurred the cost of offices, and I'll get on to what I see as like a hybrid for GGA. Opportunities. I talked about recruitment. I mean, the one thing that dawned on us is, just to put us in perspective, we're a company who have a niche programming language that we use called Ruby on Rails. It's popular, but in terms of the talent pool, it's quite a new technology, and it attracts really good senior programmers. So we're based in Bromsgrove. So previously our challenge has been to hire talent who want to commute to Bromsgrove when we're up against things like Birmingham and London and stuff like that. All of a sudden, our potential workforce is now actually global, or it could be we could say, well, it's only one in the UK. And that changes things massively. And because we've got all the processes in place for communication, that's suddenly, I don't think we would have entertained having an office with an employed workforce before, and then even having like a remote contractor or anything not located in the office. Team bonding is a huge opportunity. Just because of the amount of communication that goes on, it's actually increased, and I'll get onto that. Accountability and ownership. So the team actually, I wouldn't say more so, but they, at the end of the day, everyone's responsible in the company. Everyone's responsible for doing their bit and for fulfilling their responsibilities and roles and stuff. And I just think when you're left and given trust and everything else to get on and do the job, I think the accountability and ownership for that task, it becomes a lot more. I've seen that definitely where it's not a manager-led situation in an office, where it's this independent working. Morale, again, it's like even when you've had a bad day, you can basically you can unwind quite easily. You haven't got to commute home and all this sort of stuff. And then there's a lot more creativity. I think there's a lot more time to think, and I think you end up slowing down, and you're not in the pace of interruptions and stuff. And that. I don't know if that makes any sense so far, but it makes sense to me. The challenges, as I see it, are initially my biggest fear was communication. How are we going to address the fact? How are we going to get over the problem that when you're in an office sat next to somebody, if you've got a problem, you can just interrupt them, which I know isn't always a great thing, but you can actually interrupt and ask for help. So that was my biggest thing. The other one was quite simply a fear of isolation is one of the biggest things you'll read about remote working, because obviously the idea is that you're an independent worker now who's working in your own environment, whether that's in a coffee shop or on a train or wherever it is. But the day-to-day things that people like actually about going into an office isn't there in its I guess like face-to-face experience that we know. So we needed to tackle that. The other thing, I've said how great remote working can be. There's definitely sometimes you're on a task and you need motivating. And I think this comes on to the next point, which is there's definitely a need that everybody who is in a remote working team has to be a self-starter. If you're not an independent worker and if you need a lot of supervision or you need to be around people 24/7, I'd question whether it is the right fit, because there's no doubt it's about getting your head down, being focused without interruption and getting the work delivered. And it's quite clearly a challenge as it isn't for everyone. I think it'd be foolish to say that if we were looking to recruit that everybody we spoke to had the skill set would have necessarily the skills for remote working. So it comes into that. The other thing we had to do, which I didn't think of until like just before we did the trial, was, oh goodness, what do we do about HR and health and safety and all these things where if we're carrying desktops out of the building and doing X, Y, and Z, how's that all covered? So we've been through a whole heap of I guess, legislative stuff there. And the reality is it wasn't a big update at all. It's like that is not a barrier to entry at all. It's more of just a re-audit. And then I guess the other thing is that we've written, I don't know what the word is, quite a few blogs on the subject of remote working over the past 9 months and stuff. And the one thing you definitely need is there's no point doing it if only one side of the equation believes in it. So if the team came to me and said we want to do remote working and I was dead against it, it's a failed project. And in the same way, if I want to do it because I want to reduce office costs, but my team don't want to do it because they prefer work environment in an office, I think you're going to be up against a lot of conflict and a lot of barriers. So there's some of the challenges that we managed to identify, and then I hope I've got a solution for each of them really. The other thing is that I did a lot of my own research into the case of what do companies who currently are doing this remote working do. What are some of the incentives and rewards and some of the things that happen? I mean, we're talking, quite well established companies with lots of investment and stuff. So it's still a thing that I put into my planning and my strategic goals for the year in terms of how to reward staff. So the biggest thing is, I think, a big reward that you're giving your team or people who are involved in your business is trust. You're basically saying, I trust you to get away and to get this work done. And if you've got the monitoring and stuff in place, and the communication, it's a huge boost. And we've just done reviews recently, and every time we've done them since we've had remote working, it's been one of the #1 things that they feed back about. It's a constant. A lot of companies who do remote working, where the company is saving in office costs and stuff, will look to redistribute some of the that expense. So a classic one is they'll I guess as a counter to this fear of isolation and this almost like, a health issue of just, there's a reverse, isn't there, where somebody can stay in their own bedroom for 7 days and not leave. If they give them like monthly, health and fitness passes. Another company I know I've spoke to, they actually deliver a fruit basket, like a vegetable box every week on a Monday morning to their staff, which in essence costs, a couple of quid or something in the grand scheme of things, but it has a huge boost to what they're interested in. The other companies I've spoken to, because we've done quite a little bit of research since we've done it, which is probably the wrong way around to do it, they actually give budgets, like an expense amount per month to an employee to go and uptake a hobby. So if you wanted to learn to play the guitar, they'll give you X amount per month as part of your kind of hobby package as an incentive, and then you'll go off and you'll do karate or whatever you want to do. They'll fund that. to make sure that you are going out and meeting people and tackling that fear of isolation. Holidays, again, there's quite a few companies I know who they pay ideally quarterly, but once a year for the whole company. It depends on the size or the whole team, to go away on almost like a retreat as a big team building thing. Might just be for a weekend somewhere like Rome or whatever, but it's like the whole point is it's the company team together, having some quality face-to-face time. Allowances we've talked about, it could be allowances for consumables or allowances for hobbies and stuff like that. And I think, you know, as we've got below, one of the things we've done is we've made a point of every single month we have a day in the office, as we've got an office at the moment, and we've done it off-site as well a few times. So it's basically like a big strategic day, and we tie that in with lunch, and we tie it in with a few cheeky drinks and stuff like that. And then we've got a few events planned as well, like go-karting and brewery tours and stuff like that, to just keep the team well gelled, I guess, even though that's a horrible phrase. And then I guess in terms of how we do it, I've just said we do a monthly strategy meeting. The biggest thing we do every single day at the same time at 9:15 is we use Google Hangouts, and we have a video conference call for 15 minutes. It's a strict 15 minutes where we basically go through what the team's going to deliver today. It's part of our Scrum and Sprint process, but it's a really good way of just having it as a team hangout, where I can, you know, relay back to the team what my movements are today and, you know, what I'm up to, and so can people who aren't necessarily involved in development. And then every Friday afternoon for half an hour we do a hangout where we do a retrospective, which is effectively a review of the week, and we move post-its around on a Google draw board where we basically say what's been good about the week, what we change, and then from a management perspective, I always look to address the change and see how we can stop that keep recurrently coming up every week. And I've said there's a monthly social. So some of the tools that we've got in place are, I mean, these are techie tools, but they'd work across any organisation. I strongly believe that, and I've helped implement some of these into you know, manufacturing, engineering companies, whatever. So there's one called Slack, which is an instant communication tool. It's becoming really popular in the tech world. But if you need to have a real-time conversation, we haven't found anything better than that. So as I speak now, all of my team have got Slack open in its one shape or other, and basically that's where they can exchange ideas or address challenges. So in the same way I sort of said that you could you know, tap somebody on the shoulder in an office, Slack is the equivalent of that. But I think what we've done as a team is we've become way more respectful of people's time and interruptions. So as in an office, I used to actually I put my hands up, I was a real nuisance. I'd walk in after a meeting, make coffees or whatever, and start interrupting people and saying, what are you up to, how's your day going, I'm amazing. And whereas now it's a bit more of a, you know, I can contact Paul in the office and say, you know, can I grab you, you know, can we have a hangout at 1 o'clock or something? And I think it's just a different form of communication. We use things like Basecamp and Teamwork as their project management, so that's all online as well. And then we use a tool called Loggable to do all their time tracking and timesheets, so we've got all the metrics we had before. Google Hangouts is predominantly our biggest form of communication. And I think because we've become a lot more remote, all our clients are national, and we actually use video calling as well a lot more now and share screen with clients, exactly like you're doing on this webinar, than we ever did. So we're actually cutting down on travel time across the board. And once a client's effectively onboarded, it's become their preferred method, is everybody can jump on a hangout in the next 15 minutes and address a conversation or whatever, rather than having to schedule a meeting in a week. We use Trello as virtual post-it boards, so this is going back to how we actually manage some of the workflows. And then I guess you know, people are in a few camps on it or whatever, but we use Google for everything. So Google Calendar, Google Drive, you know, Gmail, and I think all of this, the beauty of all of this is it works on mobile and it works on your desktop. So what I've noticed as well is I get the train a lot more now. So if I've got to go to a meeting in Birmingham, I'll get on the train and effectively I'm as connected as I know more now on the train sat into Birmingham than I did when I was actually in the office interrupting people. I think when you're in the office, you're only asking the things that you need to know, or you're even talking about mundane stuff just to make a point of you are in the office. And then now I can, you know, log on, I can see the conversations, I can see the progress, see all the metrics, see where we're up to, and the communications increased massively as a result of actually having it to my fingertips. And then I've got the process to you know, have conversations with people as and when. And then I guess the final few bits of inspiration. So it's funny enough, thing in the middle, jelly. So I don't know, I'll have to assume that you do or don't know what what a jelly is, but basically it's a co-working group. So it's across the world now, but there's hundreds of groups of jellies, and what they do is, I think it's every 2 weeks they get together in a location, and they basically are a group of people who aren't necessarily sole traders, and it's just one-man bands, but it's a group of people who work remotely, and they go into an office for a day, and they all work as though they're in an office environment. It's that, you know, that same thing I was talking about with their monthly meeting. And as I walked in this morning, there's one in an office I've just passed this morning that's happening. I'm going to go and pop in there afterwards. So there's about 10 people there who are doing exactly what I've just been describing. And I had a chat with one of the guys before we went in, and it turns out he works for a digital marketing company based in Spain, but he lives over here, and he's part of a 50-strong team. But that's how he's operating, so it was really good to kind of walk in today and go, well, actually, this is it in practice. A book, probably the best book on the subject, is quite controversial again, but it's Remote, which is by a company called 37 Signals. It's really worth looking at, and they basically allude to all of the kind of summary stuff I've talked about. So if you are genuinely interested, I'd say Remote would be a really good read. And then you even get things spawning now, like there's a 37 Signals have launched a website called We Work Remotely. And the idea behind that is it's a job board for people who work remotely. So if we were to go and look at, there's probably about 10 sites that do it now, but if we were to go and look for that type of person who works independently, who's actually looking for a remote job, there's now job boards specifically dedicated to those types of roles. So it's kind of just addressing some of the recruitment things as well. I think the lessons we have were remote working does not mean working from home. It's the best thing I've ever done as a business owner. It's the most empowering thing I've ever done as a business owner. You've got to have measurement in place. Communication's improved dramatically just because we can, I guess, we're very courteous now about how we talk to each other and how we engage people's time, because we know that at the end of the day we're interrupting people. Productivity, we've seen productivity increase as a result of their measures, and then our clients have ended up thinking we're way more innovative than probably we really are as a result of it, and they've actually come on board, and everybody's using time in a much more productive way, and my, you know, travel time and everything's cut down massively, and I think we've developed a whole new product as a result of it. You do end up working longer hours, which is one. I've put it down as a win, but I think I meant that as a you can choose which hours you work and stuff. Way more responsive. We get loads more ideas from the team into the business, and I think we've got increased ownership of some of the challenges and stuff that we face. And I've said before, we're actually getting fitter as a team, which is unheard of in IT. So hopefully that's answered basically what is remote working, why you should potentially care about it as a I guess like a movement almost, and in answer to do you need an office, it goes bang. It's everything I've said over the last 29 minutes, but I think there's still a place in this world for having an office. Like we're potentially going to be looking at downsizing and having a serviced office as a base, because despite everything I've said, the world's still living paperless, and you still need somewhere to have certain you know, legal requirements and X, Y, and Z. So, but that's just me. And then if it's about will it work in your business, I think hopefully that's given you a bit of insight into how we've done it. I think that's about it, really. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Paul. That was great. We've had a couple of questions come through. Has this affected your work-life balance?
Let me answer that, yeah.
Please.
Sorry. Yeah, so obviously it's massively affected it. I mean, I've freed up loads more time to spend with my own family. I didn't start in business just to work long hours and to not reap the rewards of quality time with my family. I know the guys are exercising a lot more and spending more time with their family. So I think the work-life balance has gone up massively. It increased, you know, massively really. So if that helps.
Perfect, thank you. When did you decide to do this, and what was the first step that you made?
Yeah, so I think we're quite reactive. So we literally decided in that team meeting about what we were going to do, and then literally, so that was on the Thursday, and then on the Friday we put together almost like a to-do list of what we need to do to enable us to go remote in terms of our systems more than anything, like what hardware would we need and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we started it on the Monday. I'd probably say you need a bit more time to prep it. We were a bit flying by the seat of our pants sort of thing, but yeah, no, it was quite quick.
Okay, and thank you. One of the potential concerns with remote working will be the loss of control. What lessons have you learnt in terms of keeping this control?
I think it's basically comes down to putting in some really simple reporting lines and agreeing amongst yourselves how to approach people and stuff. So the classic thing like putting in the daily stand-up at 9:15 really helps with setting out what the objectives are for the day, and it's a really good touch point. But then I think it does come down to some metrics. I wouldn't say that you want to come up with 50 or 60 things to measure, but I'd say that you want to identify 3 or 4 things that can be easily recorded, but then you can use as a measure going forward. So something, I mean, we do agile, so we have like a productivity velocity, so we can actually measure whether that's going up or down. I'm sure it's different for every business, but there must be 3 or 4 things that you can directly measure in relationship to communication and productivity. I'd say keep a record of that before and then constantly review it. And I think because we do retrospectives on a Friday, it's a really good way to feedback in terms of how the team think it's going and how management. It's another idea of nipping in the bud things. But the great thing is using things like Hangouts. At any moment in time, I can spin up a video call with my team member and have a chat one-on-one. Now, in the previous thing, we'd have to schedule a meeting, and it could be that the moment's passed or whatever. We'd have to take them to one side. It was embarrassing. It's just a really private way of doing that. I hope that answers the question. Happy to to go into more detail another time, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. How do you protect your data when moving from sites, and do you have a data protection policy?
Yeah. So this is really important, and I really picked up on this in the book Remote. So effectively, a lot of our data anyway was in the cloud, but effectively we've now gone to 100%. Everything in our business really is stored on remote servers, either servers that we own or software that we're licensing. And I think the biggest thing is you definitely have to have a written data policy, data protection policy for your staff. You need to probably be a little bit more cautious about, not cautious, you have to be a bit more proactive as well. I think like one of our simple things is we stipulate, you know, password policies like length and stuff and what needs to be in there, but we also stipulate how often they should change. So we don't want to leave effectively open doors and stuff in our thing. So security is massive, and I think if you're not using the cloud or that will be an area of concern, there's definitely people way more qualified than me to explain that, but I think it's definitely the way that everything's going, and it's a thing to embrace. But it's a really good shout is don't overlook IT security and policies and stuff. We took some, I guess, external advice on it as well. So it's part of like you basically create a strategic plan for doing a remote trial, and in that I'd definitely say data protection policy. So thank you for raising that. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. We've got a couple more questions coming through. What happens if your business grows to more than say 50 people and keeping track of people in the business becomes almost impossible?
Let me read that. What happens if your business goes to more than 50 people and say keeping track of people becomes almost impossible? Yeah, it's a good point really. Obviously, my first-hand experience is I'm doing it on a much smaller team, and I'd say that my gut reaction to that would almost be to try it on a small, like almost department or something first. I mean, it goes back to putting in. You should be able to measure whatever you're measuring in the office today. There's no reason I'd say long-term why you can't measure that remotely. It'd probably actually improve and be more accurate would be the honest answer. But one way to approach it might be to think about, you know, one team or one area in the business that could do it. But yeah, I think keeping track of people, obviously it depends upon the context of what you mean of keeping track, whether it's visualise on them as in how they're actually doing what they say they're going to do, or is it actually the outcomes? as in have they done what they said they were going to do. It's a tricky one without knowing the context, but I'd definitely say if you can measure it in an office, my experience is there's nothing you can't measure externally. Even like there's loads of systems now for timesheets and, you know, for anything you can think of, you know, like things like Loggable. But yeah, I'd say if there was a specific example, I'd probably be able to think of that. But yeah, I think it's if you can track it in the office, you can definitely track it in the remote workforce. But I think start small. The other thing I'd say is when I go back to do you need an office, in the book Remote, what was interesting for me is that they have a team of, I think there's 48 people work at 37 Signals, and what they do is everybody is allowed and entitled to work remotely, and they're massive advocates of remote working, but at the same time they have a big office and people choose where they work, and they've actually found that on average half the workforce are in the office and half are out, and it's completely down to the individual. What they do stipulate is that they've got the right measurement in place, the right policies, and also that there's core hours where they cross over. So they'll have like 4 hours every day where it's somebody from a different team needs to be present. I hope that goes some way to answering it.
No, that sounds perfect. Next question. How have your clients reacted to your change? As it could make some nervous about being able to contact you when they need to.
Yeah, I'd say, and this is obviously my interpretation of it, but I do a lot of calls to clients on a weekly basis, just purely from, I guess, a customer happiness point of view. But yeah, I mean, they've all responded really positively, and it's actually had a funny impact because we work with one housing association, and as a result of it, they've now started to explore remote working, and they're following what we're doing quite closely to decide what they're going to do in their own implementation. And we've actually ended up doing quite a bit of consultancy with some clients on it as well. In terms of being able to contact us, I think it's made us easier to contact, because what we've done is, because we've said there's not an office number necessarily to, you know, that goes to a reception desk in a building, we've had to put in place the reverse. So you still call an office number, you still get to speak to somebody, but now what we've got is a way that that message gets passed to the right person at the right time. And then we've got reporting lines on projects as well, where using things like teamwork, the client will log the query or the message on that system, and then we'll get straight back to them. So in one respect, I know it sounds really stupid, but I think we're way more proactive and approachable. And because there's like one or two routes to contact us, and they always get a response, it's never been a problem. And then I think what they've benefited from, that we've benefited from, is if they need to have a conversation, because we're so available in the sense of these online tools and stuff, we can all jump onto, like, so for instance, this morning we did some work for a client yesterday, which is a big public body, so a big public sector office. We did some work for them. That was delivered. They had a meeting at 8:45 this morning to go through it, and then they, out of the blue, 9:45, can we get on a hangout with you? Now, they'd never used a hangout before Friday when we started working with them, so we were on a video call with them this morning, and we basically got the next part of the jigsaw, like the milestone, signed up, and now we're into the next bit. So I think it makes you way more streamlined and stuff. You're not trying to organise diaries. You're just immediately available. Hope that helps.
Oh, thank you, Paul. That was really interesting, thought-provoking session. I will send, as usual, a copy of the presentation out to everybody this afternoon, and also include contact details for Paul. So if you have any other questions, then please send them direct to him, and I'm sure he will answer them as soon as he can. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope you can join us again same time next week for our next session. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.